Welcome to the Thriving Farmer Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Kilpatrick. Our mission is to inspire, educate, and celebrate sustainable farming. We believe that you can build a profitable, sustainable farm that gives you true farm freedom. Join us as we talk to farmers, innovators, educators, and entrepreneurs to glean their top takeaways in business and life. Hey, Thriving Farmers. Today, my guest is Jacob Towe of Jubilee Farms in Pauline, South Carolina. After helping with his family's Christmas tree farm from an early age, Jacob launched his own regenerative farm as well as a local grocery store focused on real food and farm-to-table connections. Jacob, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Share a little bit about kind of your background in farming. You started with the Christmas trees, and give us a little bit of history there, and then kind of what led you to the regenerative side.
Yeah, so sort of got into the Christmas tree thing just as a happenstance of life. My grandfather, as a retirement project, started a Christmas tree farm, and loved working outside, loved spending time with family and engaging in those projects. As time went on, I really became interested in agriculture just generally. We got involved in a 4-H program with chickens, and chickens are the gateway drug to other
Yes.
farm animals. So started with chickens, eventually built that up to a flock of roughly 500 chickens, where I was selling eggs door to door to a little over 200 households in the town that's near us.
Yeah.
And that was great and wonderful. But then I went to college and got a 2-year degree, and that and 500 chickens was just a little bit much, so kind of shut that down for the most part, and heard about this crazy guy named Joel Salatin who said that you could actually make a living farming, and everyone around me was telling me that I was nuts for wanting to spend my life in agriculture. So sent in the application to be an intern, and miraculously got chosen. Spent a better part of a year up there, and came home and opened Jubilee Farms.
Very cool. So when you said you went to college, what was that degree in?
I was a degree in welding and fabrication.
Oh, very cool. So you actually have a very practical degree that you could use in your farming.
Yeah, originally the idea was I would go work on the pipeline or in a nuclear power plant for a few years and save up a big wad of cash and come back and start farming, because that's actually what Joel recommends. He recommends have a year of expenses plus your nest egg to start this thing.
Correct.
Well, I then promptly got an itch and ignored that advice.
Okay.
And just sort of bootstrapped my way through it, and I paid my bills basically, and then every cent beyond that I earned for about 4 years, I just put into farming operation. Yeah.
All right. So talk to me a little bit about your time at Polyface. What would you say your biggest takeaways from that experience was?
The biggest takeaways, honestly, from a big picture perspective, is what's really possible. That you can really do this and have a successful, profitable operation, and make a living not only for yourself but for your family. And another big thing that I would say is that scale is incredibly important. Polyface is raising groups of pigs that are, like a small group of pigs at Polyface is like 40, 50 pigs.
Correct. Yeah.
Whereas you look at a lot of, and not to bash on anybody, but like the more homestead scale level of agriculture, where people are raising maybe a few pigs, a couple for themselves and then a couple for other people, it's just really hard to carve out a profit at that scale.
Well, yes. And I think at that scale, you end up mostly paying for your feed or paying for the pigs for you, and your labor is going into them, end up being free. So yes, you're right. It's a different scale. And what I try to tell people is hopefully you're a different end goal. Your end goal on a homestead is really just to cover your expenses, and it's not a business at that point per se. Unless you're going to value add it extensively. I think just because, again, you're right. It's the groups of efficiency. I mean, if you look at Polyface, there's groups of pigs they don't even see for 3-4 days.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's completely fine. But then you think about on the homestead scale, typically they're out there twice a day taking care of them. So just your time alone is drastically different.
Absolutely. And then buying inputs, in quantity.
Yep. Feed on like a 50-ton scale versus a, 50-pound bag.
Yeah, completely different mathematical equation. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
not even closely related at that point.
Yeah, yeah. And I think too, like you, when you're at that smaller scale, because you haven't taken that many to the butcher, you're going to make mistakes with how things are processed and all of that. So, they'll make the mistakes in 1 year that it may take a homesteader 15 years to make. And, again, they're at a system where it's just now a process.
Oh yeah, I've certainly experienced that. Coming up through this project,
Yeah.
people will request specific things, and I have learned that by and large, you're better off to take a considerable amount of salt with the suggestion to do something special or custom, simply because people will say that they want things and then not follow through with
So,
actually purchasing them.
so it's almost like if they want a very specific thing, they need to prepay for that, and then you will get it in the production system.
Absolutely. I tell people, look, if you have a very particular set of cuts or something that you want, the best way for us to do this as a team is I will just sell you the whole animal. We will go to the butcher and sit down together and go over the cut sheet and figure out
Mm.
exactly what you want. And we will get that done and it'll be what you want.
Yeah, and everyone
But
will be happy, hopefully.
and everyone will be happy. Yeah. But if you take a trailer load of 10, 15, 20 pigs and you have 3 or 4 of them cut that way because they say they're all hot and bothered to have this particular special weird cut taken, they might come back and buy one.
And now you're stuck with all that inventory that no one else knows what to do with.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so then let's talk. So you went to Polyface, came back. What was the first things you started with your farm?
So we still had some laying chickens. I had kind of handed that off to my sister while I was gone, and she kept that going for a while, but she eventually lost interest in it and I took it back over. Nowhere near the scale that I was at with that. Just because I learned really quickly that it's hard to be competitive and make a profit in that area. So we have chickens and we offer eggs basically just for our loyal customers. Um, and we make a little bit on them, but we're not getting rich
Yeah,
with
yeah.
the eggs. Then the first major operations that we started with were pastured poultry and pork. Um, Sort of just jumped both feet into both of those things, and have done well with both of those. Those have both been all right to us.
Okay. And so then with those, what's your scale at with those now?
So the pastured pigs, the most I've done in a year since then has been about 100,
Okay.
which is a lot.
Yeah.
You have to if you're doing that many, you really are starting to look into wholesale opportunities, just because that is just a ton of product to move around. And then with the pastured poultry, up until this point, we've operated under a 1,000 bird state processing exemption.
Uh-huh.
But going into 2024, we're looking at bumping up to the federal exemption.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. And then with the poultry, do you do pieces and parts as well, or just whole birds?
Yeah, we do pieces and parts and whole birds. I try to do as many pieces and parts as possible just because you're getting paid more for very little input cost. Your time is the biggest input. But especially if you've got a couple people to help you, you can really move through a lot of birds quickly and easily double your profit margin that way.
Yeah, gotcha. And then do you do any like sausages or chicken sausages?
We don't. The state exemption in South Carolina doesn't allow for that. We're allowed to cut
Okay. All right.
poultry, but we're not allowed to mix anything in with it.
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha. Okay. So you're working under that.
yep.
Talk to us a little bit about like your farmland, how many acres you're working with, and kind of the layout.
Yeah. So I actually just bought the remaining part of the family farm. So I personally own a little over 100 acres,
Okay.
and then the collective of what I own and then what the rest of my immediate family owns comes to right at 200.
Gotcha. All right. And so is it all contiguous?
It's all contiguous, fortunately.
Okay. Gotcha. And then what soil types are you working with?
We've got a sandy clay loam that makes up probably 80% of the farm, and then we've got rock that
Okay.
makes up the other 20%. Yeah.
So then with that sandy clay loam, is that something that's relatively easy to work on, or does it end up getting really messy in the winter?
It's pretty messy in the winter. It gets soft if it's wet,
Okay.
but if it's dry, it's pretty much just a rock. It's like the worst of having sand and clay. Um, we used to have, a couple hundred years ago, the area that we live in used to be rich in topsoil,
Yeah.
but as the history of agriculture goes, we are not fortunate enough to have that anymore. So we're slowly we've made improvements, we've made visible progress all
Mhm.
over the last few years that I've been doing this, but we still have a lot of work to do for sure. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's talk through the grocery store then. You've also got this grocery store that you supply and run called Farm Fair. Talk a little bit about that.
yeah, so right at a year ago, there was an antique store in our tiny little community that went out of business just due to personal reasons. And we had always wanted to have a store on the farm, but where our farm is located is not really a high traffic area. We're kind of on a little side road. And the concern was, well, we would invest all this money in building a building and stocking it and staffing it, and then no one would show up.
Mm,
So we became aware of this building that was available, and it's not a very big building. Our storefront's right at 1,000 square feet,
okay.
but we became aware that it was available. We reached out, happened to already sort of know the owners, reached out, got to know them better, and we were able to lease it. It's worked out great.
Mhm, mhm. So then what's kind of like the flow through there? What's your how many hours are you open? Kind of how does that all work?
Yeah, so there is a elementary school just down the street from us, and so we are open in the afternoons between 2 and 6, Tuesday through Saturday. The
Okay.
idea being that we're catching those parents coming home from work and picking their kids up from school just down the street.
Okay. And then like how many different vendors do you have in there now?
Oh goodness. I think last I checked, we were getting close to 100.
Wow.
Um,
Okay.
it's yeah, we've got and a lot of it is seasonal produce vendors. So we don't we have a little family garden just for ourselves, but we're not a produce farm.
Mhm.
That's not what we specialize in. We like to play in the dirt, but that's not our gig.
Yeah.
So a lot of those are produce vendors, and they may produce 3 4 crops that they produce in a significant quantity, um and they may only have them for a couple 2 3 4 months out of the year. So that's part of the reason why we have so many vendors. But yeah, we've got a lot, and we've got a lot of value added products from other companies. We've got a lot of canned goods. There's a local company down the road from us that grows and grinds their own stone ground grits.
Mm,
So we've got lots of things that are from within the community or from neighboring communities. It's really cool.
very cool. So what has been like your process to build customer traffic through there?
Yeah, so the first one was location. That's why we chose this building, is because it's at a fork in the roads with pretty much the two biggest roads in our little town here. So we knew that just by default we would have a lot of people driving by. Um, in addition to that, a lot of word of mouth. We really try to encourage our customers, tell your family, tell your friends, come back and see us. Um, a little bit of social media stuff. We've done a little bit of paid social media advertising, not a lot. We're looking at expanding into more online advertising, and actually yard signs.
Mhm.
Um, it's not incredibly expensive to order 100 custom yard signs, and we just put those things out like confetti, and that has also helped
Wait a
quite a
minute.
bit.
Okay, so you just get these pre-printed large yard signs, and then you just put them everywhere around the area.
Yeah, everywhere. But anywhere where there's an intersection where someone would stop or slow down enough to actually be able to read what's on the sign, we
Yeah.
just like drove around, and like, yeah, the whole little area was just covered in yard signs for like a month and a half.
Okay. All right.
And that really helped push the word out.
And then what was on the yard sign, and what exactly did you put on the yard sign?
So we just had our logo, our website, and our address.
Hmm. Okay.
And that um yeah, with that information, we figured that was enough to direct people to us if they had even a little bit of curiosity.
Yeah, well, you've got your logo's Farm Fair Grocery, so it says exactly what you are.
Yep.
Interesting. Yeah, our logo says Farm on Central, so that's a little bit less of what we are. So we might want to put a little bit about what we've got. Interesting. Okay, yeah, I want to try that. And then do you do any like emails to people throughout the week or?
We do we do emails like when we have new product or something special, or if we're having an event, we'll send
Okay.
out emails, but we try our approach to email marketing so far, because we have a pretty small email list, is something that we've been working on the last few months.
Yeah.
Is we don't want to overwhelm people with emails. Because a lot of these people are getting emails from the store as well as from the farm. So you can follow one or the
Yeah.
other. You don't have to follow both.
Yes. Interesting. Yeah, we're kind of like our farm is yeah, I see what you're saying. Um, interesting. Okay. Yeah, I see how you split that up. Interesting. So then what would you say your top selling items in the store are?
I would say top selling items, the stone ground grits are right up there in the running for it. Um, Meat products, ground beef is a big one.
Okay.
Um, Ground beef and steaks, as far as meats go, probably take number one, and then chicken probably takes a very close second. Yeah, some combination of those three would make our top sellers.
Yeah. Now, would you say stone ground grits are really popular because of the location you are? That's kind of a local thing.
Yeah, they're really popular because of the location. You know, you can tell people like, yeah, these are grown literally like 8 minutes that way.
Yeah.
You know, and like they plant the seed, grow the plant, harvest it, grind it, package it. Here it is. It's a husband, wife, and son family, and
Yeah.
that's how they do it.
Gotcha. Yeah, absolutely. Interesting. Yeah, our top are now sourdough bread, and our salad mix is a top. Just on the week to week. And obviously seasonally we would have like be more popular would be like in the spring strawberries. But
Mm.
yeah, sourdough bread is to the point that we're getting ready to put a bakery in. So yeah,
Wow, that's awesome.
yeah, the amount of bread that goes through here, because I pay the invoices. I'm just like, okay, we gotta stop spending so much money on bread. So I mean, we make our margin on it, but it also they charge us $8 a loaf, and so then we mark up to 11, and we're still selling. I think. Well, I can go look at here because I'm sitting in here looking at the invoice that just came in. 56 to 70 loaves, 70 to 80 loaves this week.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, that is. This week we sold 80, we were billed for 88 loaves.
Wow.
So, yeah. Well, it's interesting though, because that has actually pushed. Now, the bread isn't our own because we're bringing it in, and I don't think it's quite as good as my wife's. But people come in, buy the bread, pay $11, then go look at our sourdough starter for $15, and they say, "Okay, sure, yeah, I will buy a sourdough starter because I want to make it myself." So it's interesting how that just trickles down and gives other products a kind of bit of a runway to sell.
Do you have a source for selling the customers flour then after they come and buy the starter?
So we do. We are not quite set up on that yet, but we actually have a guy about a town over that is growing hard red wheat. So yeah, we can absolutely start selling his grain. We've actually tried it. It's very tasty. It's just a matter of us going ahead and getting it packaged up.
That's awesome.
How do you sell the grits? Is it in like a paper sack sort of thing, plastic lined, or?
So they're in a plastic bag that's heat sealed across the top, but then
Okay,
it has a like Ziploc opening,
gotcha.
so you can
Yeah,
continue to use the packaging.
gotcha. Okay, I know exactly what you're talking about. Very cool. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the team on the farm. Is it just you? Do you have team members? What do they do?
So on the day to day, it's mostly me, but I certainly could not do what I'm doing by myself. So I'm fortunate to have a brother and a sister who are willing to help me when I need it,
Okay.
and my mother also helps on the farm.
Okay. And then in the store, is that just you, or do you have staff there?
So yeah, the store, it's the four of us, and then we're actually just talking about hiring our first official Real Deal employee. So
Gotcha. Okay. So then they'll be the first person. And then for when you're with the farm and you and your siblings, do you have specific things you do more of and less of, or is it kind of like all hands on deck?
yeah, so I like the day-to-day stuff is mostly me. My sister, her task in life is to collect and wash and package eggs, and I appreciate her for that.
Okay.
But as far as like caring for the poultry and the pigs and sheep and those animals, that's just me usually on the day-to-day. If I have to leave town for an event or something like that, if I've got to go for work, or on the rare occasion that I take a vacation, then they'll fill in for me. But the day-to-day, it's mostly me.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. Corinna, with today's consumer, you really have to give them exact action steps and tell them what to do. What is that called?
That is called the CTA, or the call to action in marketing lingo. And you're right, we can't assume that our customers can read our minds and know what we want them to do. We have to really spell it out when we're talking to them. So always have a call to action before you put together any kind of marketing piece. So if you're going to get onto social media and make a post, or do an Instagram reel, or write an email, you should always begin with the end in mind and ask yourself, what do I want them to do after they've consumed this content? Or where is everything driving, right? Why am I making this post? And have that in your mind before you start doing a live video, right? That way you don't just share something and then sign off and don't tell them to take action, because they're not going to connect the dots and realize, oh, she wants me to go buy those tomatoes. We have to actually tell them to go do that at the end of the video. So be really clear about what those call to actions are, and you can have lots of them. I feel like in my business, I sort of have 2 or 3 that are the primary ones, that the default ones that I'm always going back to. But if I have a special offer, then I'm really clear about what that specific call to action is as well. What are some examples of CTAs that you use?
Well, I think it's also important of where you put them too, but we'll do everything from in the shop, because we have a on-farm shop now, like, check out here. That's a call to action. But on our website, sign up for the strawberry wait list here. And there's where they put their email and click the button. In an email, sign up for your CSA share here. It's that, that button or that link, and really calling that out. You have to make it very, very, very clear, because it's amazing. We shake our heads and we look at each other, and there are 3 doors on our barn. 2 of them go into the shop. One is a great big sliding door that goes into the back. And even after we put the sign up that says enter farm shop here, people will still walk to the big sliding door as if, that is where they would enter the farm shop. So you have to make it super clear what you're trying to do. But yeah, those are the call to actions we have. And, you pick flowers here, and we literally have a sign out in the field pointing toward the flower field, even though they literally just drove by the flower field on their way into the farm parking lot.
I love that. I think in general, for the overarching business goals for your business, you should have 1 or 2 calls to action. Like for me, it's get on my store email list. It's my gateway offer. So that is a call to action that I keep front and center. And I'm asking myself, when can I say that this week? How many times can I say that? Because I have a lot of calls to action. I have a lot of things I could ask them to do, but what are the 1 or 2 things that are most important? And to keep it simple and be repetitive, say it over and over again, so that it cuts through all of the chaos, and they're like, oh, okay, I'm going to go get on our email list. And then I can kind of guide them through the rest of the journey.
Absolutely.
If you want more farm marketing tips like this, check out my top rated weekly show, the My Digital Farmer podcast. I teach marketing concepts and interview lots of farmers to find out what's working and not working in farm marketing to help you find more customers, increase your sales, and build a strong brand for your farm. Look for the My Digital Farmer podcast on your favorite podcast app.
Talk a little bit about what has been in the years of running the farm. What do you feel like if you went back and started over again, you would do differently?
Well, I would definitely heed that advice I ignored from Joel Salatin about save up a big old chunk of money before you start this thing.
Yeah.
I don't regret the way that I've done it, because I've grown at the pace that I was able to, but it would be a lot less stressful if you knew that your personal expenses were covered for a year, and you had probably more than what you think you need to run your farm for the first year.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. I would, if I had a time machine, I would go back and tell myself to do that. Um, and oh man, that's a tough one. I would say figure out what your centerpiece enterprise is going to be, whether that's produce or particular livestock, whatever it is that's going to be your thing that you're going to build your name around, and get really good at that before you add anything secondary to that. Um, because it's easy to get too excited and want to add things before you're ready to be able to handle them. It's when you're starting out, especially.
Yeah. I know, like for us having a walk-in freezer, it took us a couple of years to get it, but now that we have it, it's actually already full. So within like 2 weeks, oh, that thing's full. Oh, whoops. So yeah, I mean, being able to have that revenue, that capital, be able to buy those things is so nice.
Yeah, and it's tough. It's tough when you're starting out because you want to get going, and there's a balance between the your ability to do things and your ability to pay for things.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the systems on your farm, like the growing systems. Are you pretty similar to Polyface on a lot of those systems, or have you kind of made your own changes?
We're pretty similar to Polyface. We use a little bit different infrastructure because it suits our needs better.
Okay.
So like with the pigs, I've done the like double hot strand fencing, and that's great. That works well, but the electric netting from Premier One is it has advantages in certain applications. If I were in a situation where I really didn't want a pig to get out of the fence, I would definitely lean towards using a netting product um, over just the stranded fence. So that's an example with the pigs. With the poultry, our our terrain is a lot rougher than Polyface's. We have a lot more gullies and a lot more hills, and so we actually have a smaller footprint chicken tractor that we use, just because it's easier to maneuver. So I'd rather pull 4 instead of 3 if I'm not chasing chickens that are squirreling out from underneath of them and all that fun stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah. With the pigs, what kind of size groups do you typically run them in?
I've had as many as 60 in one group. That was kind of a lot for one person.
Yeah.
So I like to be in the like 20 to 30 range. That's pretty manageable for to have that many that are one size. And I can fit about, depending upon how big they are when we take them to processing, I can fit anywhere from 10 to 15 on the trailer. So that means I can take that whole group in 2 trips to the processor. So that's not too bad. That's pretty manageable.
Yeah. Yeah. And then with that processing, are you looking for a general range of cuts, or has there been something that you've been surprised that people have been so interested in?
Well, the easiest product to sell from a pig is sausage.
Okay. Yep.
It's people, especially, in the South, everybody's got to have their sausage gravy biscuits. And breakfast sausage just flies off the shelf. That's the number one selling pork product. Surprisingly enough, people also jump on $18 a pound pork tenderloin like it's going out of style.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you have the cheapest cut of the pig, the breakfast sausage, and you have the most expensive cut, and those two are the first to go.
Interesting. Okay.
Chops, actually, for us, we sit on chops a long time before we sell them typically. They just do not sell that quick. I don't know why. We've done boneless, we've done bone in, we've had them cut bigger, we've had them cut smaller, but chops, people just don't seem to be that interested in them. And I don't know why, because they're delicious. But
Yeah. Now, do you spread recipes out with folks for when they're interested in buying things, or in the store? Do you keep recipe cards out?
we do, especially for new products or products
Mhm.
that we're really trying to move. Then we'll make up some recipe cards and put them with the product.
Okay.
We don't
Gotcha.
do it for every product
Yeah.
because that would be a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. That's like us. We keep up 3 or 4 on rotation pretty much. So Talk to me about like when you're bringing products into the store, do you typically do it on consignment or do you bring anything in wholesale and then just mark it up? How does that typically work?
We do a little bit of both. With products like the grits and things that we're comfortable with and that we know that we're going to sell, we typically just buy them by the case, so that the farmers, they're getting paid immediately.
Hmm.
They don't have to worry about it. They tend to like that more. We do have some products that we sell on consignment. We have firewood that we sell on consignment, just bundles of firewood.
Okay.
We have some food products that we sell on consignment, but not a lot because most farmers would just prefer to get the check and move on. But like if it's something where we're really not sure that it's going to work out for us, or we're not sure what kind of volume we could take, then we negotiate a consignment deal, and we're also able to, in some cases, pay a little bit more on a consignment deal simply because we're not having to come out of pocket for more inventory.
Gotcha. Okay. Interesting. So you're going to give them more money on that because you just don't have to spend the hundreds of dollars on inventory.
Yep.
Interesting. Yeah, that's good. What would you say the people are coming to the store for? Are they coming for your meats? Are they coming for the other products? I mean, have you felt like there's a specific what you're known for in there?
Yeah, definitely meats is one of them. Probably the thing that people come here specifically for the most out of all the products we carry is raw milk.
Okay.
We work with a great local dairy. They're just far enough away that it's too much trouble for people to go there themselves, which is nice. But they have raw A2 Jersey milk year round, and they do goat's milk seasonally. And we are moving, oh gosh, um, I believe now we're pushing 50 bottles a week. We're getting close to that point, um, with the raw milk, and they're half-gallon bottles, and we sell them for $8 a half gallon for the milk. Then there's a $5 deposit on the bottle. They're glass bottles. We'll take them back. They take them back to the dairy. They wash them, put a new cap on them, and reuse them.
Okay.
So that's another way that it keeps people coming back, because if nothing else, they want to get their $5 back. So
Correct. Yeah, correct. Absolutely. Yeah. We have a raw milk herd share that delivers, but they just do plastic bottles. So there's no reason to. And you have to buy ahead. You can't actually like buy it in the store. So we don't even have anything to do with that at all.
I gotcha.
So, yeah. What would you say your advice to new farmers would be if you could, talk to someone who's literally maybe coming out of Polyface after an internship there?
If you don't have family land or a place that you're tied to, if you don't have a place that you're dedicated to living, I would look for an area outside of a major metropolitan area where you can find land, even if you have to lease it, or even if it's incredibly marginal, not great land, to settle down in. Now, in my situation, I had family land. I had pretty deep roots here, so I wasn't going anywhere. In my case, it wouldn't have made as much sense to do this. But if you don't have a connection to a particular place that you're committed to living, look for land in a place like outside of a major city, outside of like Charlotte, North Carolina, or outside of Atlanta. And land is going to be more expensive there. But if you can get land within an hour or two of one of those cities, and you can commute in for markets and for deliveries, in my opinion, the amount that you will be able to charge for your products will offset the higher cost of living in that area. And you'll find that it's just much easier to sell your products in the first place. If you pick if you're from a retired mill town where there's not a ton of industry, there's a lot of those around this area, and you're committed to staying there, you just need to be ready and understand that selling your products for what you need for them is going to be difficult. So location, if you can, is definitely probably number one. Have your finances in order. If you have any personal debt, if at all possible, I would want to be free of that before I made the full-time jump into farming. And if you're doing this 100% by yourself, it is incredibly difficult to work 40 hours a week and farm. I did it for about 4 years, and it's possible. I did it. You can do it,
Yeah.
but you are going to be so burnt out.
Yeah.
It probably took me a good 4 to 6 months to really feel like a living human being again after I departed from the 40-hour-a-week job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you juggle that? Were you doing chores before you went to work, came back, did chores again?
Yeah, it was farming by headlamp, you know.
Okay.
I would be up, depending upon the day, anywhere from 4 to 5:30, and be out doing the things, and then get off work, come home, eat something, go back out and work basically until I couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah.
Go to bed and just do that again for well, really for 6 days a week, because then your Saturdays are occupied at farmers markets, when you're especially when you're first trying to get established. So yeah, it makes for a long week.
So with that too, were you working like just a welding job?
Yeah, so I actually inspected and repaired tanker trailers, so fuel hauling trailers, chemical trailers, dry bulk trailers. It was an interesting niche that I fell into.
Interesting. Okay. Interesting. So what's from here on out for you?
So the plan is keep growing and expanding. Most of the 200 acres that I own and have access to is wooded. And so in the coming year, now that I've actually purchased most of that property, the plan is to have a lot of that land cleared. Most of the timber on it is marginal anyways. So we're going to clear cut at least 50 acres of that and begin to establish some pasture and really expand in the ruminant department. I really want to expand our sheep and beef, because those are both quite profitable products that I also enjoy growing. And in my opinion, as far as livestock goes, they're the most regenerative out of the animals. So we're definitely going to expand in those areas. Bump up to the 20,000 bird poultry exemption and run with that, and hopefully within a few years be at the point at which we can start to bring on full-time help and continue to grow, look into leasing more land, and continue to expand those operations. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Jacob, for coming on and sharing your experience today. It's interesting hearing kind of how you got things set up, and congrats on, the farm you're building.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So there you have it, another episode in the books. So I'd love if you would hop on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and a review. Those mean everything to us. We love to hear what you're thinking. If you have a podcast guest that you can recommend, please pop on over to the Thriving Farmer Podcast website and leave us a review. That's thrivingfarmerpodcast.com.